Are you the kind of parent that can always stay in their center regardless of the chaos going on? Are you someone that can pretty much always breathe through their frustrations and annoyances and triggers so that your kids always see your best self? I know that I 100% am not that person. And as much as I try and as much as I bring forward conscious parenting, honestly, I can't even tell you how often I need to stop, breathe, and reset myself so that I can show up in my best possible sense for them. So, if you are like me and you want to get some tools and tricks on how we can practice this as a spiritual journey, but also as a learning and awakening journey for our kids, join me and I will talk to you all about it.
You're listening to the Intuitive Mastery Podcast. Hi, I'm Kate Connolly, and with over 15 years of intuitive healing and teaching experience, I'm here to help you celebrate intuition and value authenticity to create a world where you have the freedom to live your best life. This podcast is here to teach you how to apply the principles of spirituality, healing, and mindset to have true and lasting joy, all from the inside out. This is the Intuitive Mastery Podcast.
All right. Today we are going to dive into this concept of emotional regulation as parents. So when I was sitting and thinking about what we could talk about, and I wanted to kind of find the best topic that would serve you, but also illustrate what we all have to deal with in our journey, in our life journey. So I'm a parent of 4 kids, ranging from 16 to 3. And I have kind of got every single stage of development pre-adult anyway, kind of covered at this point. Have I nailed it? No. Am I trying? Always. Remembering that each child is unique, each parenting style is unique. This is mostly about how we show up in ourselves with our kids, right? How do we show up energetically? How can we help our kids feel like they are being heard and validated and acknowledged and met where they're at? And as having like 4 completely different children, there's no 2 of them that are alike in any way. I also have to kind of temper my energy depending on who I'm dealing with, right? So this is kind of a bit of a dive into why we get emotionally triggered as parents, what that's actually about, and what we're being called to do, right? What does that actually mean for us as humans? So if you love this content and you want to join us more, I have an intuitive mastery school that I run every single Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. Sydney time. And we go through all sorts of different topics, anything from clearing energy to parenting to eating to all sorts of stuff to help you become the best human that you can be. Right? To help you transform from a place of fear and reactivity and making decisions from your head and from what everyone else is telling you into someone who can really tap into their intuition. They can have all sorts of techniques available to them when they're dealing with stress and worry. And you can actually kind of step into your soul aligned paths with much more clarity. If you want to join me with that, you are more than welcome. The link will be below. And if you want to kind of learn a little bit more about just the basics of intuition and what that actually means, what relevance it has to your life and why it's important, I also have my book here. It's called The Intuitive Heart Revolution, and it is available on Amazon and all the different bookstores. So jump on and grab that as well, because you will get lots of really cool information. Okay, so today I want to talk to you deeply about this emotional regulation issue, because as much as we may want to show up as great parents, and as much as a lot of people think they are showing up as great parents, my biggest journey, honestly, has been, okay, where can I improve? What am I doing that's not helping them feel safe, loved, and looked after? Ultimately, our kids need to know that they are important. They need to know that they are valued, and that they need to know that they are safe and they are loved. And every time we go into a reactive pattern of behavior, we put a doubt in their mind about that. And I wish I could say it was kind of more easy than that. Like we could probably have like 10 times where we lose our cool, and then by the 11th our kids are starting to get a little bit iffy. It's just not so. It's not so. I've had really good relationships with all of my kids, and if I am having one bad day and they are slightly having a bad day as well, and I am not my centered self, they are actually deeply impacted by that. And it shows up in different ways with different children. So one of them she's 5. If she hasn't had the connection that she needs, if she feels like her needs haven't been met, if I've been a little bit cranky before bed or even during the day, she will always have a nightmare between 9 and 10 o'clock at night. She'll have this kind of night terror almost. And we've noticed that the more her needs are met and the calmer she is, and the more balanced we are, my husband and I, she doesn't have those. It's remarkable how that works. I have one of them that goes into anxiety attacks if her needs are not being met, but also if there's been conflict and stuff in the household. And unfortunately, in our household, she's kind of like she's the reflector of everybody. So a lot of families have this family member who is the reflector of everybody else's stuff. Now, in my birth family, that was me. And in my current family, that is one of my daughters. And she reflects back to us any dysfunction that's going on. And we are far from a perfect family. We have lots and lots and lots of things that we are working through. And we've had lots of conflict in the past. And she is our reflector of that. And that shows up for her with anxiety, with mental health stuff, with, physical stuff. Like it's really big for her. And it's such an important job for me to not only take radical responsibility for myself, and for my husband and I to then take radical responsibility about how we're showing up in the family. But then we also have to support her and meet her where she's at with what she's dealing with, primarily to release stuff that isn't hers, but then also, most importantly, to keep validating and acknowledging if she is struggling with stuff herself. And when you are young, it's really hard and almost impossible at times to tell the difference between what you're picking up from your surroundings and what's yours. Because typically, if you're around stuff for long enough, you do actually believe that all of this stuff is yours, right? How many kids believe that they are the reason their parents divorced? How many kids believe that the conflict in the house is their fault? How many kids feel like, their mum or their dad being really sick is because of them? They do take this stuff really, really seriously. And if we as parents don't help meet them where they're at on that, it does cause a lot more damage. So I didn't really want to get that deep so quickly, but it is something I'm quite passionate about because I strive to be the best possible parent that I can be. And I know that I very frequently don't meet my own expectations. So there's many, many different reasons why, but primarily I'm going to talk about emotional regulation. Okay, that's probably the biggest one. So emotional regulation is our ability to stay somewhat balanced. Okay. Now we're all going to have highs and lows with our emotions. We're all going to feel angry sometimes, or sad sometimes, or neglected sometimes, or frustrated, or whatever it is that we're going through in our lives at any particular moment. And our ability to self-soothe through those moments is critical to how we show up as a parent, right? So if I'm feeling really angry about something, and I've seen this happen in my family, and I've spoken about this before in another podcast, is that we do establish this chain of pain. And if I'm having a bad day and I throw it at my husband, then he throws it at my firstborn, and then she throws it at the second one, and then the second one throws it at the third one, and then the fourth one gets pulled in as well. And literally, this can happen in a matter of minutes. So within 10 minutes, my anger has now impacted 6 people. And it's not okay. That stuff is actually not okay. And it's something that I've had to learn to be really conscious of. And it's something that I've actually had to learn to be really responsible for with my own regulation. And these days I'm much better at it. I can usually regulate myself really well because I do lots of the techniques I'm about to discuss with you soon. Okay? And when everybody else is dysregulated, it's really important if you are the conscious human that's listening to this podcast, and if you are the one that holds the biggest energetic responsibility of the household, it is kind of on you to hold that space as well. So 90% of the time, I can hold that balance, I can hold that space. And then when I have those moments where I'm just really either too exhausted or really stressed or really frustrated by something, then it is actually up to me to remove myself and to clear myself energetically, to breathe deeply, reground myself, and then do what I need to do as a parent. Okay. My kids have seen me do that in front of them. And that's okay too, because then they're also learning that emotional regulation is something that we are all responsible for. It's real, and that they can get the tools on how to do that in real time. Okay. So no one's perfect. We're all going to have days where we're not doing what we want to be doing. But I just want to really encourage you to be okay with your own journey and be okay with having to stop and breathe and to recalibrate and just say, okay, kids, just give me a minute and breathe, right? And give yourself an opportunity to reset your tone, reset your intention, reset the energy, reset the words. And the second you do that, you will have instantaneous shifts in your kids. Okay. So, why is emotional regulation key? I've kind of sort of explained it, but the impact can be really, really devastating. And even just the smallest thing, especially I notice this with my 5-year-old a lot. If I say something in slightly the wrong tone, and it's not necessarily intended to be harsh, but it might be because I'm distracted or I'm, in trying to get something else done or whatever it might be, and I might say it in a tone that's not okay, she will actually cry. She will actually get really upset and she'll cry. She's a highly sensitive human. All of my kids are, probably because they're mine. But it's such an important part of us understanding ourselves and how we're showing up, because they become our little mirrors. All of them become our little mirrors. And if we have a child that's not doing okay, we have to turn around and look at ourselves. We need to understand that our family is only a reflection of how we are showing up and how we are showing up in our relationship if we are partnered while we're parenting. Okay. So if your kids are dysfunctional, I 100% promise you there's going to be a link back to you or your partner or both. Okay. So, as much as that can be really confronting, and it has been for me as well, it's also this beautiful medicine. Understanding this about ourselves doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a self bashing, I'm such a bad parent, what's wrong with me? I've been there, it's not that fun. I don't recommend it. It's a really good opportunity to be able to tune back in and go, wow, these emotions that are coming up for me, these belief systems around parenting and about who I am, that's medicine for my soul. The universe is giving me guidance here. It's telling me what I need to be working through and how I need to shift things. So, this especially goes for if you have a partner or if you have had lots of trauma in your life. Past trauma will absolutely 100% impact how you parent. And if you don't get the help that you need to move through that trauma, your kids will carry that and it will continue down through the generations. So there is such thing called intergenerational trauma. It does come down through the generations. It is actually a highly, highly important thing to understand, but it's a widely misunderstood thing because we feel like we can't get rid of stuff if it's come from our ancestor and it's really old. But actually, what you'll find is that we are in a really powerful position here to change how our generational pattern unfolds. So, for example, if you had a great great grandparent in a war and there was lots of famine, there was fear, there was scarcity, there was all of these different issues coming in, and belief systems were created around needing to be really disciplined or over strict with kids, needing to limit food, or free thinking, or people being themselves, or limit abundance, or limited whatever, anything that's sitting in that fear mindset because of their life experiences. Those beliefs and those energies actually get passed down through the generations. And even though we may be 3 to 4 generations past world wars or past civil wars or past, traumatic experiences, so abuse or whatever else might have happened in the past, we are still going to be carrying that in our energy bodies and in our DNA. And if we don't find ways to recognize within ourselves where there's problems and heal it, we will pass it on to our kids. That's it. It's a full stop, the end statement. We don't have a choice here. It is actually extremely important that we understand and make these changes so that we can be better parents. So, the impact on kids, if we can learn how to understand and recognize trauma, and if we can work through it, then the benefits to our kids is really huge. Okay? They can see how we can reduce conflict, we can enhance emotional connection, and we can really model healthy coping strategies as we learn how to do this for ourselves. So, as we break those generational patterns of behavior, our kids are probably experiencing states of safety, care, love, validation, a much stronger sense of self because they're not dealing with fright and flight anymore. They're dealing with a sense of safety. And then they get empowered to become the adults that they were always meant to be, rather than spending half of their adulthood dealing with trauma, right? And dealing with, my parents did this and this is how I was brought up and it was really strict. And, my parents used to say stuff like this and. Like, how many people, how many adults do you know that are living like that? They're living in this really limited state of being because of how they've been brought up. And we as parents have the responsibility to not do that to our kids, to help them stay safe and to give them the love and connection that they need so that they can go out and fulfill their soul's journeys, whatever they're supposed to be. Okay, this is how we become conscious, evolved spiritual parents. And for me, this has been a passionate subject of mine. It's been a long-term journey for me to find who I am, because each child ultimately teaches us something deeply about ourselves. And if I was to go through each of my kids, when I reflect on having them, each of them have given me this incredible life gift, because I've taken my responsibility as a parent from the perspective of, my children are teaching me about me. They're teaching me how to be a better human. They are my best and most powerful spiritual teachers. And if I ignore what they're teaching me, I will never become the best version of myself. This is how I see parenting. And I also believe very strongly that our children choose us. So when they come into this planet, we already have contracts with them. We already have tools that we need to learn to be good humans for them. But also, really importantly, they need to help us become the best versions of ourselves so that they can get their needs met. So it's this really reciprocal, energetic contract that we have with our kids. And the more aware of it we become, the better and better and better their chances are of becoming amazing adults. Because our job is not to be their friend. Our job is not to be a disciplinarian. Our job is to mold them gently into the best humans that they can be, into the best adults that they can be. So remember, the levels of stress that we have play a big role. The level of self-care that we have also plays a big role, because ultimately, if we don't show up for ourselves, what hope do our kids ever have of showing up for themselves? And when I talk about this in my book, but I talk about this in my intuitive mastery school as well. The priority in a family must be us first, partner if you have one second, children third, in terms of priority. Why do we do that? Because if we can self-regulate, self-care, get ourselves balanced, get ourselves grounded, get ourselves in our infinite state, not our limited state. If we can get ourselves in that quantum state of being the best version of ourselves that we can be, then our partners and children will only ever benefit massively from that. Better relationships, less conflict, more confidence, more safety, more abundance. All of that comes from how we choose to show up for ourselves, like how we choose to do our self-care. Are we meditating? Are we journaling? Are we creating conscious intentions for our lives? Are we working through our own emotional issues and trauma? Are we doing our work? Is that what we're doing for ourselves? And on a daily basis, are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you exercising? Are you doing your spiritual work? What are you doing for yourself to show up as the best human that you can be? Because the ripple effect of that is massive and profound. So then if you can do yourself really, really well, and that's also a journey, that takes time, that takes practice. This is what I teach you in the school, and this is what you can learn to do for yourself. If you can figure out how to do that really, really well, and let's hope your partner, if you have one, wants to do the same thing, and your partner ends up doing all of their inner work and showing up and doing the self-care and all of the things that they need to do, then when they come together as a couple, it's a really, really powerful union, because you're not then dealing with trust issues and commitment issues. You're not dealing with trauma and you know games, emotional games. You're not dealing with that. You're kind of getting the ego out of the way, and you're allowing yourself to have a deep, intimate connection with your partner. And when your children see that, the ultimate outcome is safety, love, peace, and acceptance. Your kids get that before you have anything to do with them. That's pretty cool. And if your kids are not displaying that, then one of those first two steps, or probably both of them, are not being done properly. And I'm saying this as much to me as I'm saying it to you, because this is also a journey for me. I haven't perfected this. This has been, my oldest is 16. I've been working on this for 16 years. I'm going to continue working on it, because again, each child needs a different kind of parenting, and that's okay. But the themes remain the same. The themes are, can I show up in a balanced way? Have I worked through my own stuff so that I'm not getting in the way of our relationship? That my old beliefs, anything that I've inherited, anything that I'm carrying with me isn't being held in the way of a deep, loving connection with my kids. And if I can get out of my own way with that, and then they can feel safe and have a really strong sense of who they are, they then spread it to the world, their friends, their relationships, their kids. And the ripple effect becomes exponential at that place. I mean, how cool is that? And all we have to do is dial it back and look after ourselves, look after our relationship, and then have that as a flow onto our kids. Now, I don't always perfect this, but I do try and meditate twice a day. When I do that regularly, everything is better. I will have stuff that comes up, absolutely. But in terms of staying regulated and calm and balanced for my kids, that's super easy. When I don't look after myself, when I'm frustrated with myself about something, if I've dropped my self care, my kids feel it and it shows. It shows in my behavior, it shows in my energy, it shows in my reactions to things. Okay. So, if we want to start showing up as a conscious parent, and a parent who is willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that not only we are good, our relationships are good, but our children are good, then we need to be really clear about setting intentions around that. Okay, it's all very well and good to say, yeah, I want to be an amazing parent. But I would encourage you to sit down if you have one or more kids and to just sit with what it is that you need to be doing differently to be meeting your child where they're at. Okay. So I'm going to take you through my four. My oldest one needs me to give her time so that she can emotionally download and so that she can talk through all the stuff that she's dealing with. She also needs sessions from me, energetic sessions, plus tips and tools on how to manage her energy in certain situations. My second one doesn't like talking at all, but she does need my presence. So as long as I'm doing something in parallel with her, as long as I do, she's an acts of service child. So as long as I do some acts of service for her, her needs are met as well. Okay. But they're completely different humans. So I can't parent them the same way. It's much more natural for me to parent the way that I parent with my oldest. But with my second, I really have to do it quite differently. And her needs are very, very different to the first one. So if I tried to parent the second one the way that I do with the first, I would be missing something and she wouldn't be getting her needs met. So learning even things like 5 love languages can be really helpful because then it can give you tips and tools on which love language each child has and you can try and meet them there where they're at. But also just observe them. Observe, do they need to talk a lot? Do they need time alone a lot? What do they need in order to feel safe and loved? What lights them up the most? What are the kind of things that make them feel like they are valued and they are important and they are significant? Okay. And those are the things that we need to be showing up with our kids. Okay. The third one needs a lot of hugs and touch and attention. And she needs me to listen to her. If I miss her starting to talk to me, she gets extremely frustrated. So it's really important for me to turn to her. She's only 5, but she's already aware that, hang on, you're not listening to me. That's not okay. I have to try and, as much as I can, stop what I'm doing and engage with her. And it might only take 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but if she gets out what she wants to say, then she's okay and then she can go. The fourth one needs, she needs attention when she decides she needs attention. And she's pretty self-sufficient otherwise. If she really, really needs me, she'll koala onto me for about an hour or two, or sometimes up to 2 to 3 days. And then when she's good, she's gone. I don't see her. And the only time she comes to me when she's in a good place is if she's fallen over. She needs a little kiss. We call it a bisou magique in French. She wants a bisou magique wherever she's hurt herself. She gets a really quick bisou and then she's fine. And then she walks away and she's happy as a clam and she just continues to be herself. And then when she goes through periods of time where there's change or things that are different and she really needs that reassurance, she'll be that koala again. And that's okay. She comes in and out of it. But if I don't hold her and I literally carry her with me whenever we're together for as long as she needs until she doesn't need it anymore. So when I can understand how I can be of service to my kids, and when I understand the needs that they have, I need to then find ways to manage my own energy so that I can do that from a place of energetic neutrality. Okay. So by that, I mean, if I'm tired and frustrated, I need to deal with that. I need to move through my own stuff so I can show up for them. But that means that I need to have cared for myself first. Okay. I'm not suggesting we become martyrs. I have been the martyr. I don't recommend it because martyrs usually give and give and give and give, but they have nothing in the tank. So if you're giving from an empty love tank, you ultimately end up in complete deficit, and everything you give comes from an energy of resentment. So I'm not suggesting you do that. That's a terrible way to parent. Personally, I've done it. It's not great. Once we learn how to fill up our own tank, and then we understand what our needs are and how to make our kids feel important and significant, then we need to try and meet them where they're at energetically neutrally. That means that if I know today, for example, my oldest daughter has asked me to give her a session and to teach her some energy techniques, I need to make sure that my energy is clear, that I've rested because energy work can be tiring. And I also need to prepare for emotions that she's going to have, questions that she's going to have, and any kind of clinginess that might be there because she's feeling insecure. Okay. And that's my job. My job is to prepare for that so that when the time comes for me to have that session with her, I need to be as energetically neutral as possible. That means that I'm not going to try and overgive and rescue, but I'm also going to be not be resentful because I have to give myself. Okay. Energetically neutral means that I'm not triggered by what I'm about to do. So if I've got four kids at me and at me and at me and at me and at me, and that happens often where I've got at least three kids talking to me at once, and I'm starting to get irritated and frustrated, that's my clue to realize that I haven't self-cared enough. So my homework then for me, my gift in that moment is, oh, I haven't looked after myself enough. What can I do tomorrow, or what can I do later today where I can look after myself better so that when I have three or four kids talking at me, I have the capacity to deal with it. Okay? So it's a constant feedback loop between you and them. And we also have to parent with our partners as well if you have a partner, and nurturing that relationship. When you do that above the kids, so you're looking after yourself, you're nurturing your relationship, and then your kids are usually automatically better off. But when they do need you, it's not necessarily coming from an unsafe, desperate, please help me because I don't know where my place is in the world. Okay, this is what happens when the foundations, which is you and your partnership, are shaky. Then the kids feel really unsafe and shaky as well. Okay, this is why the hierarchy is there. This is why it's you, then partner, then kids. And so as we learn how to manage our own energy and become energetically neutral with how we need to be showing up for them, then everything flows infinitely better. Now, I'm not saying that we need to spend 6 hours a day meditating for the 2 hours of parenting that we have to do. My meditation sessions last maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe. And if I do that first thing in the morning, then I'm already really balanced. And if I do it last thing at night, I'm actually really, really balanced. So if I have four kids yelling at me for 2 hours, that is quite trying. That can happen sometimes when things are a little bit chaotic at home. Then my job is to remember to breathe. Number one, recognize that I'm not doing okay. And then secondly, find a way to de-escalate myself, become energetically neutral so that I can show up with love. Okay, that's my job. And if I don't learn how to do that, then our kids do and will suffer. Okay. Now, I'm sure I've done this hundreds of times to my kids, so I'm not saying that I'm the expert. I'm so not the expert here. I've just had a lot of experience and I practice this every single day. So this is my invitation to you as well. Let's become practicing parents together where we're consciously showing up, we're creating positive intentions, we understand what our kids need, and we do our best by showing up for ourselves and our partner first. And by becoming energetically neutral for our requirements, we can then give them the best possible chance at feeling safe, important, and significant all at once. Okay, so outside of intentions, we can use breathing techniques. One of my favorite ones is the 5-second breath, where you put your hands on your heart space and you breathe in for 5 seconds and you breathe out for 5 seconds. And while you're breathing, you think of things that you are grateful for, things that you have appreciation for, and you give yourself that permission to reset in that moment. Reset's probably the best word. Okay. So you can use that in the moment. If I've got all four kids around me, sometimes I'll just say, hang on, kids, just give me a minute. I'll just put my hands on my heart. I'll breathe in for 5. I'll breathe out for 5. And I'll do that 3 or 4 times. I don't stop doing it until I feel recentered. Okay. And it's going to take you a lot longer if you don't do self-soothing or meditation or any kind of spiritual practices outside of those moments, because those practices that we do for ourselves, and it could be anything. It could be going for a walk, it could be any level of exercise, it could be journaling, it could be meditating, it could be deep breathing, anything that's going to bring you into a calmer state of being, because that becomes your threshold. Then that becomes that lowered threshold of escalation, or it's a higher threshold really of escalation, because you're not going to get escalated as much. Then in those moments, it might only take 3 or 4 breaths for me to completely reset and I'm okay. If I haven't done self-care for 4 or 5 days and I'm really stressed and I haven't slept and I'm hungry, like mixing all of those things that can increase stress, and then I have 4 kids yelling at me, I promise you a few breaths is not going to work, right? I need to actually then probably take myself away and spend a good 5 or 10 minutes completely away from them before I can reset myself and come back more neutral. Okay? It's also really good to give your kids permission to call you on it as well, because I've had that happen before where I've been in a bad place and one or other of them have said, "Oh, mom, you're really angry." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't feel angry. I obviously said something harshly and probably with the wrong intention. Oh, thank you for that awareness. I'm going to like calm myself down and I'm going to show up differently." Okay? So it's okay for them to call you on it, respectfully, obviously. But for me, I find that a really good feedback system, because sometimes we don't always know when we're doing this to our kids. And I notice, especially with my 5-year-old, who's between her and my oldest, they're my most sensitive. If I do something in slightly the wrong tone, they're both quite reactive. So it's really, really important for me to become super mindful of how I'm speaking and the tone that I use. Okay, so breathing, 5-second breathing is really, really important. Sometimes clearing your own aura, so cutting cords and clearing your aura, can be really helpful. If your kids are particularly sensitive and they're really, really struggling, I find what's really helpful is to pull all my energy back into me. So I'm not trying to kind of infuse them with my own stuff and try to interfere with their experience. I literally ask for all my energy to be pulled back so I can hold a much stronger space. And that usually calms them down quite significantly. So that might be worth trying as well. There's lots and lots of energy tips and tricks that you can try. I've got a lot of it in my Intuitive Mastery School. But at the moment, intention and awareness is such an important part of this puzzle, because once you understand and realize the impacts and the benefits, it's a game changer. Okay, so remember, in everyday life, we don't always have the opportunity to spend enormous amounts of time meditating and breathing. I try and get up early and go to bed a tiny bit later to make sure I fit it in. But if you are just really struggling with fatigue and not coping very much, just remember all those little moments really, really matter. Okay. So start with small, low stress moments when your kids are not feeling escalated, such as during morning routines or a bit of time of reflection before bed. Give yourself an ability to connect with them in those moments where you're actually feeling okay. And I'm not suggesting it's in the chaos of trying to get out of the house for school, for example, because that's definitely not calm. But when there's just really small moments, really low stress moments, just find moments to connect with them and give them that sense of safety and validation and significance. Okay. Now, remember that emotional regulation doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that we can do without consistent practice over time. The most important thing that I find is the intention, right? If your intention is to be a calm, healthy role model for your kids, then often the awarenesses will come from that. So if you start with that intention, that's really powerful. And just remember that the more consistent you get with your self-care and then you're recalibrating during stressful moments, the more consistent you'll be, the more consistent they'll be, the happier they are, the better the relationships. Okay. It's a long-term practice, I have to say. It's not something that you can even, manage in a week, but over time it does become second nature and you will be able to just do this without thinking. So again, like I said before, I sometimes will do these breathing or rebalancing techniques in front of the kids. And I do actually believe that's a really important thing for them to learn and understand. There was kind of a few generations there where they tried to kind of hide everything from the kids, any kind of conflict, any kind of rebalancing, any kind of self-soothing techniques, any self-care practices. Parents would kind of keep it from the kids and they would just show up and do the business stuff like getting them ready for school or giving them dinner or sending them to their homework. And a lot of that emotional, spiritual work, if they did it, was private and separate. But how do we teach our kids how to do that, right? If they don't know how to emotionally regulate because we've never shown them, how are they going to do that for themselves? It's not going to be possible. So practicing in front of them is actually really, really healthy. If I'm doing yoga or trying to do a bit of exercise, I'll often put it on when my kids are around. Not always, but sometimes, and they love it. They'll just put out their own yoga mat and practice for 5 minutes and then go off and play. But they know and they honor and they respect that you're looking after yourself. Except for my 3-year-old who likes to be under me with the downward dogs and stuff like that, and likes to be held when I'm doing bridge. That's okay. She's joining in. She's not stopping me. She just wants to be significant in that moment, and that's okay too. Okay, so remember setting intentions, breathing techniques, energy work, clearing trauma, showing up with that energetic neutrality with your kids always. We do that by self-caring, nurturing our relationships, and then meeting our kids where they're at so that they feel significant, loved, and important. Okay, these are key steps. Okay, so just try one of the techniques next time you're feeling a little bit imbalanced, but I'm also going to encourage you and invite you to do a bit more self-care. If you're feeling like you're always dysregulated, look at some self-care that's going to help you feel really good. And then when you can do that consistently, see how that impacts your moods and your behavior with your kids. And in those moments, if you do feel a little bit out of balance, a little bit dysregulated, give yourself those moments to breathe and reset yourself. Make sure that you get energetically neutral when they need you, or if there's conflict, or if they have problems that they need solving. Being energetically neutral around all of those things is absolutely essential as a good parent, in my opinion. And then, give yourself permission to practice this over time, okay? Because this is something that will take time. Okay, please put in any questions, feedback, share your own stories in the comments. I'd love to hear your own story in your parenting journey. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe. And if you want to join up to our Intuitive Mastery School, you are more than welcome. If you want to buy the book for basic information, please go for it. It really is a good handbook there as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was super helpful to you and have an amazing rest of your day.